What is going on, alpha males? I just did a stint. You guys may be aware I went back to the East Coast. Somebody was in the hospital and a wife and I went back there to help them take care of their young kids. And I got to be exposed to a lot of normal people, which I don't consider myself very normal. But it made me realize how much I don't miss things like living on grid and television and couches. I don't miss that stuff. I don't care about it. So I thought it would be a good time to repost this episode. Hope you enjoy it. Hello. Welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast. The podcast where we talk about all things alpha male and what it means to be an alpha male in today's modern society. Today's episode is going to be entitled A Spartan Life. As always, I am your host, Michael Milito. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I come at this, like everything else in life, from a Christian perspective, and I make no apologies for that. Also, a little quick bio. Marine Corps, combat veteran, infantry, assaultman. Worked several years in law enforcement, including LAPD. Currently serving in another branch of the military, won't say which one. And I'm currently a professional firearms instructor. Now to dive into today's topic, talking about the Spartan life. Now, obviously you heard my bio. I'm a soldier, I'm a warrior. Have been since I was a young man. But that's not the aspect of Spartanism we're going to be really focusing on today. Spartans were known, and Spartan, as the verb goes, being a minimalist, doing more with less. And being happy with less, and having an abundant life with less. That's what we're going to talk about today. First, I'm going to read to you from the Holy Bible. Take heed, this is Jesus talking. Take heed, beware of covetousness. For a man's life consists not in the abundance of things which he possesses. Obviously, like I said, I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus Christ, the perfect man, all wise, all knowing. He said the abundance of a man's life doesn't consist in the things in which he possesses. And I found this in life obviously to be true because it is true. I grew up pretty poor. And looking around at people that had more than me, I guess I thought that they had a better life. I hope that you're not falling into this trap today, looking around at celebrities and people that have a lot of money thinking that they automatically have a better life than you. They may or may not, but they certainly don't because they have more stuff. Now let me read to you from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary talking about Spartan. Obviously, number one definition, a resident of Sparta in ancient Greece. The second definition, marked by strict self-discipline, self-denial, a Spartan athlete is an example. The next definition, subsection B, often not capitalized, marked by simplicity, frugality, and avoidance of luxury and comfort. Then it goes on to expand Merriam-Webster. Did you know in ancient times the Greek city-state of Sparta had a reputation for severe and highly disciplined way of life it enforced among its citizens, so as to keep them ready for war at any time. Physical training was required for both men and women. A boy began his military training at 7 and would live in the army barracks for much of his life. A simple, disciplined way of life. Again, the abundance of a man's life is not measured in the things that he possesses. Not the physical, tangible things anyway. We're especially susceptible to this here in America in 2018, or whatever time and place you're listening to this. We've been sold a lie, the Coca-Cola commercials, the IKEA ads, the Lexus, rolling down the street, that these things are going to make us happy. And you get all these people growing up, running around, trying to buy the nice house with a 2-car garage and fill it full of jet skis and quads and this thing and that thing. And they're miserable working, 60, 70 hours a week at a job they can't stand for maybe 1 or 2 days off a week. And they die miserable, spending their whole life having pursued things that never really make them happy, just because everybody else says it's going to make them happy. When they should spend some time examining what really does make them happy. If you have that hole in your life, that longing, that sadness, you're not going to fill it with stuff and be happy. Trust me. Only one thing fills that hole, and that's God. That's not the topic of today's sermon, but trust me, that's true. Now, I'm not against stuff. This is not an anti-stuff podcast. I am for stuff. But you get to a point where more stuff doesn't add to your life, it takes away. You can spend a little bit of money and get a perfectly serviceable, perfectly decent car. You know, whatever that is, a old used Ford Escape or a Toyota Echo a few years old or whatever it is that is perfectly functional, perfectly reliable, and get you everywhere you need to go. And to think that if you had that brand new Lexus or whatever other luxury car, go to the extreme Lamborghini, that you'd be happy. Don't believe that just because somebody else tells you that it's true. If you don't like driving, having a better car, as long as you have a decent, reliable car now, having a better car, if you don't like driving and being in a car, that nicer car is not going to make you any happier. You just stop and examine that. Just because a TV commercial says it will, or just because your buddies say, ooh, that's really cool, doesn't mean it's going to make you any happier. It's not like I've never fallen for this trap. One of my things is I like guns. I like guns a lot. Obviously, I'm a professional firearms instructor. That's part of my life. But honestly, I have more guns now than I need. And if I never bought another gun the rest of my life, I'd probably still have more than I need. And recently, I've sold way more guns in the past couple of years than I've bought. But it took me a long time to realize that a gun sitting in my closet is not doing anything for me. There's some that's sitting there every once in a while, like the gun I use to hunt elk with. Obviously, I don't go elk hunting every day, and I keep that gun for when I need it. But buying another gun that's just going to sit in the closet is not going to make me happy. Yeah, it might be the new shiny thing. It might entertain me for a short time, but in the long run, there's no happiness that comes from that. I've got some really good competition pistols. I've got some really good everyday carry pistols, concealed carry pistols. I've got some good law enforcement military pistols. And that's really all that I need. I see ads for new shiny things, shiny guns, that the next whiz-bang thing and the next improve this or that. And it's tempting sometimes, but I know at the end of the day I'm better off spending that time and money shooting and actually training than getting another shiny gun that just is going to sit in a safe. There's a time and a place for going out to eat with friends, with stuff like that, but be honest with yourself. I mean, there's a time and a place for that. If other people want you to do it and you do that and sacrifice to make them happy, that's fine. But if you, honestly, with yourself, would rather sit home and eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and watch old Friends reruns on Netflix, and that's going to be more restful and relaxing for you, then do that. Don't feel like you need to go out and spend a bunch of money on a meal that you're going to forget about 30 minutes later and think that's going to make you happy. An example of that, personally, pretty much every night before I go to sleep, after I get back from the gym, before I go to sleep, I eat about 9 eggs. A dozen eggs here in the state where I live is about $1. You know, I could spend more money and have a fancier dinner, but why? I like eggs. They're easy to cook. I'm tired when I get back from the gym. I'm tired when I get off of work. Make about 9 eggs, throw some mustard on them, some salt. I'm good to go. That's a Spartan life, and it's good. Now on Sunday, on the Sabbath, I might have a little bit fancier meal to enjoy it, but day-to-day basis, those eggs are cheap, they're nutritious, they're good for me, they work just fine. Why spend more money on stuff that's not going to make me any happier? And yes, my cholesterol is just fine. I have it checked a couple times a year for the military and for other jobs. No worries there. I live in a city, and there's a ton of stuff to do 24 hours a day here. You know what I'd mostly like to do most of the time? Sit down in the quiet and read my Bible. That makes me happier. When I was younger, I thought going out and partying and doing this thing and that thing and going to this fancy place or that fancy place, you know, that was going to somehow make my life complete. Praise God, now I'm older and wiser. I just assume sit home and read my Bible. That's way more entertaining and beneficial for me than going out to some crazy place and doing something I don't really enjoy just because other people tell me that I'm going to enjoy it or that everybody else enjoys it. That's no litmus test for if I'm going to enjoy it or not. Be honest with yourself. There's a time and a place to do stuff for other people. If your sister's birthday and she wants you to go out, or, you know, your wife really likes to go out and do a certain thing, sometimes it's okay to compromise and do that stuff. But what I'm saying is, changing yourself to try and be popular with other people never makes you happy. Yeah, they might like you and they might like the things that you do, but they don't really like you because they don't know the real you. And before long, you don't know the real you either because you're acting like somebody else. Be yourself. If you like going out and doing this thing or that thing, do it. But be honest with yourself. If you just assume do something simpler and cheaper, do that. You'll have a happier, simpler life. When I was younger, I bought a big, fancy house in California up in the hills. You know what? Worst investment I ever made. Way bigger than I needed. I spent a lot of time fixing it up and a ton of square footage that I didn't need to heat and cool and this and that. And after that, I lived, not right after that, but a while after that, I lived in a tiny house up in northern Idaho. And I loved that way better than I ever loved that big house in California. It was a simple Spartan life. It was probably 300 square feet, and I loved it, and it was more than I needed. That's however big that was, 3-bedroom, 2-story house. I didn't need that. It wasn't good for me. It added more frustration to my life than I ever got joy out of it. That little tiny house I lived in was everything I needed, and I really enjoyed it. Who cares if my friends were impressed with a big fancy house that I had to work hard to pay for? I could have worked less hard and enjoyed myself and went fishing more and lived in a tiny house like I did up in Idaho. It was great. When you buy something, make sure you look at quality versus value. Just because something's got a brand name on it doesn't make it better. If you think that people are going to think you're cool or like you because of the brand of stuff that you wear, you need to really evaluate what you want people to think about you and really what you want people to value about you. If the best thing you have to offer them is the brand of clothes that you wear, you really need to examine your life. That's not being an alpha male. Be yourself and be a strong, independent alpha male, and people will be attracted to you. I make it a point not to wear anything with logos, no slogans, nothing like that. If you saw the way that I dressed, very plain. Praise God, I'm in great shape and I stand out that way. But as far as stuff that I wear, plain clothes, no logos, no nothing. Now, I have some really nice, expensive, couple $100 boots. My tactical pants cost a lot of money. I'm not saying that you can't buy stuff that's expensive, but don't buy it just because of a name. That Nike t-shirt that you have, that costs $50 at a nice fancy store at the mall, you could get a t-shirt that's probably just as good from Walmart, the same color, the same fabric, that just doesn't have Nike on it. Now, that being said, like, Nike makes some good running shoes. If you're a runner, like I run a lot, I'm not a big fan of Nike because they tend to be too narrow for my feet. I have pretty wide feet. But I'll spend some money on some good, my good combat boots. I use those all the time. My good running shoes that I run a lot, and I'll spend a little bit of extra money on those. And sometimes the better brands actually do make a better product. But what I'm saying is don't spend the money on something and don't spend more money on something just because of the brand if it's not a better product. I trust my life to a firearm every day. And I'll spend the money and get a really nice firearm. But I'm not going to spend, several grand more for something just because it looks fancy if it doesn't actually perform better. Think about this. How many of us, if you're, a little bit older, how many of us have spent a lot of money on something? Think about like a jet ski, for instance, or a nice boat or something that sat in your garage that you spent a lot of money on, use it a few times, and you look at it and you think about how many hours after taxes you had to work to buy that fancy thing. Let's use a boat as an example. You bought this really fancy, nice boat for you and your family or just for you or whatever, and you used it a few times and it basically sat in your garage. And look at that thing and think about how many hours you worked on that after taxes. And what would have given you a more enjoyable life? That big expensive boat? Or you just standing on the shore with a fishing rod and a fishing license that costs 5% or 2% of what that boat did, or 1% of what that boat did, and having that time that you had to work to spend on that and actually go fishing? or actually spend time at the beach or spend time in the water instead of spending all that time working and working and working for that thing that you thought was going to make you happy, and it just sits there and doesn't make you happy. I have purchases like that in my past. It is what it is, but I'm saying think about these things. Don't think that stuff is going to give you an abundant life. A man should work. A man should work hard. The Bible says if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. If you're that alpha male, you should be gainfully employed. We all go through, well, hopefully not everybody, but most people go through periods of unemployment in life. I've been there, done that. But if you can, you should work, and you should work hard. But you should work hard for God and because you're a man, not to buy stuff that you don't need thinking it's going to make you happy. If you're in that trap now, buying all this stuff that you never use or don't need, and you wonder why you're not happy. You spent your life trying to pursue the things that you thought were going to make you happy, and you get them, and you get them, and you get them, and you get more of them, and you get bigger of them, and you get more expensive of them, and you're no more happy than you were before. What is that telling you? The problem's not the stuff. The problem is you. It's in your soul. Look back to the Spartan. They only owned a few possessions. Even after they were married, they still lived in a military barracks. If you've been in a military barracks, you know that's pretty Spartan. I'm talking about modern barracks. You're happy if you got air conditioning. I can only imagine what barracks were like in ancient Greece. But a lot of us look at the Spartans and we kind of want to emulate them as men. And it's not because of the stuff that they had. It's because of the men that they were. Have an abundant life because of the kind of man that you are and the kind of life that you lead, not by the stuff that you have. I'll quote again from the Bible. Naked you came into this world, and naked you're going to leave. You can't take anything with you when you go. You'll find that in Ecclesiastes. One day, none of that stuff's going to matter because you're not going to be with it anymore. There's a time and a place for stuff and for consumerism and capitalism and to buy stuff and to have nice stuff and to enjoy it and to enjoy the fruits of your labor. But use those things to experience happiness and joy and peace. Don't search those things to give those things to you. It's just stuff at the end of the day. The abundance of your life is not consist in the things that you own, but in the kind of man that you are. You're an alpha male. You have more to offer your friends and your family and the world than stuff. Offer them things more valuable than stuff, than silver and gold and shiny things. Offer them things like honesty and courage and protection and morality. Those are the kind of things that are going to give you an abundant life and make you that alpha male. Thanks for listening to the Alpha Male Podcast.